Egan and I had been inseparable for years, from childhood through adulthood. We shared everything: joys, sorrows, and secrets only best friends would understand. I thought nothing could ever come between us. But then everything changed when she entered our lives. Sarah, my fiancée. We had been engaged for some time, and everything seemed to be going in the right direction until she left to study abroad. Even though we were far apart, I trusted our love. Sarah meant the world to me, and despite the distance, I eagerly awaited the day she would return so we could build a happy life together. At first, everything was fine. Sarah and Egan got along well, and I never suspected anything unusual between them. The three of us continued to hang out as we always had, and it seemed like nothing had changed. But soon I started noticing little signs. The way they looked at each other lingered a little longer, their conversations seemed more private. There were more times when Sarah lied about working late, or when Egan suddenly became too busy to meet up with me. At first, I brushed it off, convincing myself I was overthinking things. Surely nothing could be going on between my best friend and my fiancé. Then, bit by bit, the truth began to unravel. One day, I accidentally read a message on Sarah's phone, secretive, suggestive texts between her and Egan. My heart shattered. The two people I trusted most had betrayed me behind my back. Confronting them both was agonizing, but no explanation could fill the emptiness inside me. Our relationship between me, Sarah, and Egan collapsed like a sandcastle in a raging storm. The bond I had once taken pride in, my friendship with Egan, was now a scar that would never heal. It all started when I, a lawyer, and Egan, who worked as a chef, were out shopping for ingredients because Egan wanted to treat me to a dinner for helping him with a legal dispute at his restaurant. As we were walking down a busy street, a sudden scream pierced the air. Thief, thief! An elderly woman had her purse snatched right in front of us. The man who stole it sprinted away, leaving her shaking and shocked in the middle of the street. Egan and I were about to chase after him when a familiar figure rushed past us. I blinked, and then I saw her. Sarah. Sarah, I exclaimed, unable to believe my eyes. She was back. But before I could process my emotions, Sarah caught up to the thief and tackled him to the ground with surprising strength. Egan and I ran over, helping her pin the man down. The elderly woman, now clutching her returned purse, thanked us profusely, her eyes brimming with tears of gratitude. The police soon arrived to arrest the thief. As the chaos subsided, I stood there staring at Sarah, the strong woman who had once been a part of my life. She was panting, her hair disheveled from the chase. Our eyes met, and suddenly, all the emotions from the past came rushing back. William. Sarah whispered my name, her voice trembling with shock and surprise. I stood frozen, unsure of what to say. My heart pounded, overwhelmed by a swirl of feelings. How long had it been? Did she even remember me? Egan glanced at me, then at Sarah, smiling slightly. Looks like you didn't just run into your ex, William. You found her playing the hero, too. Sarah chuckled softly, her eyes still tense but softening. I didn't expect to see you like this, William. I smiled, but the unfamiliar distance between us was undeniable. Neither did I, but you've changed. You're stronger now. The three of us sat down at a nearby cafe to catch up. During Sarah's time abroad, my life had remained intertwined with Egan's, but sitting across from her now, I realized I had never truly prepared myself for this reunion. Sarah shared stories about her time overseas, the challenges she had faced. Egan listened attentively, occasionally chiming in with light-hearted remarks. Yet, there was an unspoken tension between us, as if all three of us were hiding our true feelings. After the cafe chat, things between Sarah and me felt awkward. Egan, always perceptive, sensed it immediately. With a soft smile, he patted my shoulder. Maybe I should give you two some space. I have some business to take care of at the restaurant, he said, his eyes glinting with something unspoken. William. Sarah, enjoy your time. I'll head out. I looked at Egan, slightly surprised but quickly realizing his intention. Egan always had a knack for reading the room, and it was clear he knew we needed time alone to talk. Thanks, Egan, I replied, trying to stay as natural as possible. Egan winked playfully before walking out of the cafe, leaving me and Sarah sitting across from each other in the now unnervingly quiet space. The usual buzz of the street seemed muted, overtaken by the tension lingering between us. Sarah gently swirled her coffee cup, her eyes distant as she stared out the window. I knew this meeting wasn't just a random coincidence. We both knew there were unresolved things between us. William. Sarah's voice broke the silence, her tone hesitant. I know. Things aren't the same. While I was abroad, I did a lot of thinking about us. I remained quiet, listening closely to every word she said. My heart was racing, but I kept my composure. I understand, Sarah, it's been a long time and things change, but I want to hear how you feel. Sarah took a deep breath, then turned to face me. It's hard to explain. I tried to stay connected, tried not to let the distance between us build a wall, but the farther I was from you, the harder it became to keep my feelings the same. I was scared that when I returned, things wouldn't be the same. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Had the love we shared truly changed beyond repair? And now I asked, my voice gentle but full of concern, do you still feel anything for me? Sarah hesitated for a moment, her eyes filled with uncertainty. I don't know, William. I honestly don't know. You've always been the person I loved most, but time and distance have made me doubt everything. Seeing you today, I'm happy, but also confused. I looked into Sarah's eyes, my emotions in turmoil. How could we move forward when these confusing feelings were clouding everything? I understand, I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. But if we both feel this way, maybe it's time for us to be honest with each other. Can we find the love we once had? Sarah remained silent, her gaze filled with sadness. She couldn't answer, but I knew she was deeply pondering everything we had been through. Our conversation felt unfinished. But one thing was clear. Both Sarah and I needed time to face our mixed emotions and the pain that hadn't yet healed. Could we overcome it and rediscover our old love? The answer was uncertain, and both of us knew this relationship was at a crucial crossroads. Before parting that day, Sarah gently said, let's try to rediscover what we've lost. Let's not rush, let's let things happen naturally. And so we left the cafe, carrying unresolved questions and uncertainties. After the CAF meeting, Sarah and I stopped exchanging the frequent messages or calls we once shared. It seemed like both of us needed some space to reflect on everything that had been said. Yet deep down, I couldn't deny the overwhelming sense of confusion and loss that clouded my mind every day. A few days later, I decided to ask Sarah for an evening walk, hoping that an open conversation would help us confront the lingering issues. I needed more clarity, or, at the very least, a glimmer of hope for our relationship. We met at the park near my home, where the soft glow of streetlights created a cozy but nostalgic atmosphere. Sarah arrived, wrapped in a long coat, her eyes showing a hint of weariness. She gave me a small smile when she saw me, but I could tell it wasn't the carefree smile I once knew. We walked in silence for a while, the only sound being the soft rustle of leaves beneath our feet. I decided to break the silence first. Sarah, I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day. I understand that distance has caused many changes between us, but I still believe we haven't truly lost each other. Sarah stopped walking and turned to face me. Her eyes carried a deep sadness that was hard to describe. William, I want to believe that too, but I'm not sure if we can go back to how things were. My feelings have changed too much. My heart tightened at her words. I tried to stay calm, but the disappointment was evident in my voice. So what do you want from this relationship? I need clarity. Can we fix this, or are we just fighting a losing battle? Sarah lowered her head, her hands instinctively clutching her coat. I don't want to hurt you, William, but I can't lie to myself about how I feel anymore. The time apart has made me realize maybe my feelings for you aren't the same as they used to be. I was stunned by her admission, as if all my efforts to hold on crumbled right before my eyes. The feeling of betrayal washed over me, not because of someone else, but because time and distance had gradually torn us apart. So, this is the end, Sarah? We're just going to let time destroy everything we once had, I asked, my voice cracking with hurt. Sarah looked at me, her eyes filled with guilt and regret. I don't want it to end like this, William, but I can't pretend that our love is still the same. I think it's best if we let go. Her words cut through me like a sharp blade. All the beautiful memories we shared, the promises, the hopes for the future, they all seemed to dissolve in that moment. I stood there, frozen, unsure of what to say, unsure of what to do. For a moment, it felt like the whole world was turning its back on me. So, you've made your decision, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah nodded, tears starting to well up in her eyes. I'm sorry, William, but I think this is what's best for both of us. I don't want to prolong this pain any longer. I sighed deeply, closing my eyes as I tried to control my emotions. The feeling of abandonment and loss overwhelmed me, but I knew I couldn't hold on to someone who no longer longered me. Despite the pain, I had to accept the truth. I understand, Sarah, if this is what you want, I'll respect your decision. Sarah looked at me, her eyes wet with tears. She stepped closer as if she wanted to say something more but remained silent in the end. We both understood that this was our final goodbye. I couldn't say anything else. I turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier, as though I was leaving behind a significant part of my life. The next morning, I decided to stop by Egan's restaurant for breakfast. After the conversation with Sarah the previous night, I barely slept. My mind was a mess of emotions and I needed something familiar to help me steady myself. As I entered the cozy space of the restaurant, the smell of fresh coffee and warm pastries filled the air, offering some small comfort. The restaurant was already busy, as it usually was in the morning, but Egan spotted me as soon as I walked through the door. He waved from behind the counter, a gentle smile on his face as he skillfully flipped pancakes on the griddle. William, my friend, up early today? What brings you here? He called out cheerfully. I responded with a faint smile, then took my usual seat by the counter. Just needed to clear my head, I murmured, trying to mask my sadness. Noticing I wasn't in the mood for small talk and sensing the weight on my shoulders, Egan furrowed his brow slightly. He handed the cooking duties over to another worker and approached me. "Hey, can you take over for a bit?" he said calmly but firmly. Egan pulled up a chair beside me and studied my face for a long moment before asking quietly, "What's going on, William? You don't look so great. Is this about Sarah?" I sighed, staring into my coffee cup. Last night, Sarah told me she's not sure about her feelings anymore. The distance and time apart changed everything. She wants us to let go. Egan stayed silent for a while, nodding as if he had expected this. He placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, giving it a light squeeze. "William, I know it hurts right now, but you've got to remember, life is long. Losing someone doesn't mean it's the end. There are plenty of girls out there, my friend. You'll find love again stronger, and someone who's truly meant for you." I chuckled softly at Egan's usual optimism, but I could feel the sincerity behind his words. "You're always like this. So optimistic, always light-hearted about everything." Egan shrugged, smiling. "That's life. No one ever said it'd be easy, but you've got to keep moving forward. Nothing is worth falling apart over. We only get one life, why let someone make it miserable?" I stayed quiet, letting Egan's words sink in. He was right. Life had so much more to offer, so many joys and opportunities ahead of me. Sarah might have been an important part of my life, but she wasn't everything. After chatting with Egan for a while, I started to feel lighter. Maybe he was right, life was too long. And Sarah was just a chapter that had closed. I couldn't let one failed relationship hold me back. There was so much more to discover, and I wouldn't let this sadness weigh me down. Egan looked at me with a proud grin. "See? I told you. Life is still waiting for you out there, and there will be other women who are worth your time." I laughed, but this time it was genuine. "You're right, Egan, I'm not going to let this defeat me. Thanks, really." Egan shrugged, his carefree demeanor as usual. "It's nothing, my friend. Now that you've eaten, go out there and live your lifey. The world won't wait." I nodded, finishing the last of my breakfast, which suddenly tasted much better than when I'd started. After I ate, I stood up and pulled out my wallet to pay. Egan waved it away, but I insisted on leaving the money on the counter, my gaze filled with determination. "Thanks for everything, Egan, really," I said, giving him a pat on the shoulder. Egan smiled, nodding supportively. "Don't mention it, William. Just keep moving forward, there's a lot more life ahead." With newfound determination, I balled my hand into a fist. He was right. My life was still going on, and I wouldn't let the past hold me down. I walked out of the restaurant feeling a sense of relief I hadn't felt in a long time. On my way to the office, I walked with a spring in my step, lighter and more energized than ever. People on the street might have been surprised by my cheerful demeanor, but I didn't care. I had made my decision. From now on, I would live my life to the fullest without dwelling on the past. When I arrived at the office, I saw Louisa, my assistant, waiting at my desk. She stood up as I walked in, holding a piece of paper in her hand. Her usual smile looked a bit forced. "William, do you have a moment?" Louisa asked, her voice hesitant. I nodded and approached her. "What's going on, Louisa?" She placed the paper on my desk and sighed softly. "This is my resignation letter. I'm getting married, and I've decided to take time to care for my family. I want to become a wife, a homemaker." I looked at the paper and then back at her, feeling a mix of surprise and slight sadness. Louisa had been my right hand for years, an incredibly efficient and reliable worker, but I also understood that this was an important decision for her. "Louisa, I'm really sorry to see such a talented colleague like you go," I said sincerely, "but your happiness is what matters most. If this is the path you've chosen, I fully support you." Louisa smiled gently, her eyes reflecting gratitude. "Thank you, William. It was a tough decision to make, but I believe I'm doing the right thing." I stood up and extended my hand. "I wish you all the best in this new chapter of your life. You deserve all the happiness you seek." She shook my hand, her eyes shining with emotion. "Thank you for everything. Working with you has truly been a wonderful experience." Afterward, I watched Louisa leave the office, feeling both regretful and happy for her. Even though I was losing a trusted assistant, I understood that life always changes and her happiness was the most important thing. I sat back down at my desk, preparing for the long day ahead. After a long day of work, I returned to my apartment, exhausted but unable to stop thinking about everything that had happened. I collapsed onto the couch and grabbed my phone to send Egan a text. "It's been a long day, my friend. Louisa just handed in her resignation, she's getting married." A few seconds later, my phone buzzed with Egan's reply. "Sounds like a rough day. But hey, why not swing by my restaurant? I've been experimenting with some new dishes. Come over for a meal and forget about all your worries." I chuckled lightly and typed back, "You always know just the right time to invite me. What's on the menu this time?" "Well, I've got some honey-glazed chicken with cheese, a new clam chowder, and a dessert I guarantee you'll want to try right away. Come over, and I'll treat you to a meal that'll chase all your troubles away." I couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm. Despite feeling tired, the idea of a good meal and some relaxation at my best friend's restaurant sounded too good to pass up. "Sounds great. I'll be there soon." I quickly changed clothes and left my apartment, driving to Egan's restaurant. As soon as I walked in, the familiar atmosphere of the place immediately put me at ease. Egan was behind the counter, and when he spotted me, he grinned widely. "There you are. Take a seat, dinner will be ready soon." Egan waved me over to a table. I sat down, letting out a deep sigh after such a stressful day. "Thanks, Egan, I really needed this." Egan grinned mischievously and handed me a beer. "Just leave everything behind. Tonight, all you need to do is enjoy my food. Everything else can wait until tomorrow." I took a sip of the beer and glanced around the restaurant. "So, honey glazed chicken with cheese? When did you come up with that?" Egan sat across from me, looking proud. "It's a new experiment, but the customers are raving about it, so I think you'll love it too. And the dessert? It's my latest creation, apple caramel pie with vanilla ice cream. Trust me, you'll forget all your worries after you try it." I laughed. "I'm starting to believe you. You really do know how to make people forget their troubles with food." Egan nodded, giving me a pat on the back. "That's my way. Good food is always the best medicine." A little while later, Egan brought out the dishes he had promised. The honey-glazed chicken smelled incredible, the clam chowder was rich, and the dessert looked mouth-watering. I couldn't resist digging in. "This is really amazing. You weren't exaggerating at all," I admitted after taking my first bite of the chicken. Egan shrugged, looking satisfied. "I told you, trust my cooking skills." As we finished up dinner, Egan leaned back in his chair, holding his beer thoughtfully. "Have you thought about finding a new assistant?" he asked, his tone a little more serious. "Now that Louise is gone, you've got a lot of work to manage." I set down my fork and sighed. Honestly, I haven't had time to think about it. Losing Louisa is a big blow. She's been with me for years and knows every detail of the office. Hiring someone new will take time, and with my current workload, I'm not sure I have enough time to train anyone. Egan nodded, understanding. "I get that, but sooner or later, you'll have to find someone. You definitely can't handle everything on your own for long." I shrugged, thinking more about Egan's words. "You're right. But I want to find someone who's not just good at the job but also trustworthy. Replacing Louisa won't be easy." Egan chuckled softly. "Hey, don't stress about it too much. You've got time to pick the right person, no need to rush. Everything will work out, you always figure things out." I smiled back at him. "You're always so optimistic. I might start looking for a new assistant in the next few weeks. But for now, I think I need some time to really consider my options." Egan nodded, raising his beer. "Well, here's to hoping you find the right person soon, and in the meantime, feel free to come by my restaurant anytime you need to relax." I laughed and raised my beer to clink glasses with him. "Thanks, Egan, I'll definitely keep that in mind." When I got back home after dinner, I relaxed on the couch, reflecting on the conversation I had just had. It became clear to me that hiring a new assistant was a necessity, and I couldn't put it off much longer. Egan's words had helped clarify that decision. I opened my laptop and began drafting the job listing for the new assistant position. The next morning, when I arrived at the office, I was greeted by a stack of applications that had already been submitted. Sitting down at my desk, I started to sift through them, hoping to find a suitable candidate. But things weren't going as smoothly as I'd hoped. Some candidates were highly motivated but lacked the qualifications. Others had impressive credentials but lacked real-world experience or the dedication I was looking for. I carefully reviewed each application, but none stood out until I came across a familiar name, Sarah. My fingers froze over her name, and I quickly opened her file. A wave of awkwardness washed over me. Sarah, who I had just recently reconnected with under such emotional circumstances, was now applying for the assistant position. Not only that, but her resume was highly impressive. A master's degree, along with extensive work experience I hadn't known she had. It seemed that her time abroad had truly transformed her into a highly capable and ambitious person. At the interview, Sarah walked into my office with confidence, though I could see a trace of nervousness she couldn't quite hide. She sat across from me, her eyes steady, clearly determined to prove something. The tension in the room was palpable as our eyes met. "Sarah, it's been a while," I began, doing my best to keep my tone professional, though I couldn't entirely mask the awkwardness I felt. Sarah nodded slightly, offering a faint smile. "Yes, William, I didn't expect to see you here, and in this situation." The atmosphere between us was thick with tension. Although I tried to maintain a calm demeanor, the memories of our past made it difficult to fully focus on the interview. It wasn't just about the job, it was about the unresolved emotions still lingering between us. "I've reviewed your application," I said, my eyes avoiding direct contact with hers for too long. "Your qualifications are very impressive." Sarah straightened up, seemingly waiting for my judgment. "I know our past might complicate things, but but I'm here to prove that I'm qualified for this role. I'm applying as a candidate, not as someone from your past." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice even. "I understand. We'll keep things professional." Both of us knew that no matter how we framed it, Sarah's presence in this office was a challenge for us both. Could we move past our history and continue on a professional path without letting emotions get in the way? The interview went on, but deep inside, the waves of emotion continued to churn. After that intense interview, I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah. All the memories, the old feelings, kept resurfacing, flooding my mind. Trying to push through the afternoon and focus on work felt almost impossible. By the end of the day, I decided to visit Egan, knowing he would have the right advice for such a complicated situation. That evening, I stopped by Egan's restaurant. The warm atmosphere and the delicious smell wafting from the kitchen made me feel somewhat at ease. Egan was behind the counter, chatting with his staff, but as soon as he saw me walk in, he immediately recognized the contemplative look in my eyes. Egan handed off the grilling task to one of his employees and walked over to me, flashing a mischievous grin. "You look like you've just been through a battle," he said, giving me a light pat on the shoulder. I sighed, sat down, and didn't need to say anything more. Egan already knew what had happened. "It's Sarah again, isn't it?" he asked, not waiting for my response. "How did the interview go?" I looked at Egan and recounted the entire story, from how I never expected Sarah to apply for the position, to the awkwardness of facing her in such a completely different situation. Egan listened carefully, nodding from time to time but showing no surprise. "Listen," Egan began, leaning in toward me, his tone more serious than usual. "I know you still have feelings for Sarah, and I understand that things between the two of you aren't simple, but if you think about it purely from a professional standpoint, she's qualified and experienced, right?" I nodded. "Yes, she's very impressive, but isn't it too complicated? I don't know if I can keep things professional in this situation." Egan burst out laughing. "Actually, I think you should use this chance to put her to the test, not because of any hard feelings, but because you can see if she's really the right fit for the job. Make her prove herself, don't make it easy." I frowned at Egan, but before I could respond, he continued, "But don't forget, William, don't let your past with her influence your decision. If Sarah truly has the skills and you feel she's right for the position, then give her a chance. Everyone deserves a second chance, right?" I sat in silence, mulling over Egan's words. He wasn't just my best friend, he always knew how to help me see things from a more objective perspective. "So, you're saying I should see if she can handle the pressure at work?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. Egan winked. "Exactly. Don't stress about it. Just let things play out naturally. If she's really good, you'll have a great new employee, and if not, at least you gave it a try. The important thing is not to let your emotions take over." I exhaled, feeling significantly lighter. Egan always had a way of making things seem simpler. Not only had he advised me on how to handle the situation, but he also gave me a fresh perspective on balancing emotions and work. After finishing the late breakfast Egan had prepared, I stood up, paid the bill, and clenched my fist with renewed determination. "Thanks, Egan, you're always right." Egan beamed at me as I walked out of the restaurant. I felt lighter and more confident. On the way back to the office, I practically skipped down the street, filled with resolve. Sarah might have come back, and while the past wasn't easy, I now knew how I'd face everything with strength. After my conversation with Egan, I felt much better. His advice really made me think. Sarah had the qualifications and experience, and Egan was right. Work is work. I couldn't let personal feelings cloud my judgment. When I got back to the office, I sat down at my desk and stared at the computer screen for a long time. Reflecting on the interview with Sarah, she had shown determination and talent that I couldn't deny. With her skills and experience, Sarah was certainly a strong candidate for the position. I took a deep breath, opened my email, and began drafting the job offer. My fingers glided over the keyboard, typing out a short but professional message. After rereading it to make sure everything was right, I hit send. "Dear Sarah, congratulations on being selected for the position we interviewed for. With your experience and qualifications, I believe you will make a valuable contribution to the company. Please be prepared to start work tomorrow. We'll welcome you at the office at 9 a.m. to finalize paperwork and orientation. Sincerely, William." When I clicked send, I felt a mix of tension and relief. Sarah would be starting work the next day, and although there was a little awkwardness about the situation, I knew I had made the right decision professionally. The key now was to keep things professional and leave the past behind. The next day would be a challenge, but I was ready to face it. The following morning, at exactly 9 a.m., Sarah arrived at the office, looking polished and professional, just as I expected. She wore a neatly tailored suit, her hair tied back, and light makeup that couldn't hide a trace of nervousness. As she stepped in, the air in the room seemed to freeze for a moment. Though unspoken, I could feel the weight of old memories, but we both knew that today wasn't about the past, it was about work. "Good morning," William, Sarah greeted, maintaining a professional tone but with a hint of tension in her voice. I nodded, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Good morning, Sarah, let's get started." I guided Sarah through her duties and the basic procedures at the company. Though there was some initial awkwardness, our professionalism helped us quickly get back on track. Sarah picked up everything fast, immediately grasping the projects and tasks I assigned. By the end of the morning, she had already completed several tasks, demonstrating an impressive level of performance that I couldn't help but acknowledge. In the office, Sarah stood out. She wasn't far behind Louisa, and I could see her potential. Given time, if Sarah kept up this pace, she could easily match or even surpass Louisa. Despite the slightly tense atmosphere and occasional awkward silences between Sarah and me, I couldn't deny that she was doing an excellent job. She had experience, patience, and a professionalism I greatly appreciated. Every time we discussed work, Sarah exuded confidence and decisiveness, making me feel more certain that hiring her was the right choice. By the end of her first day, I couldn't help but admit that Sarah had been successful. She had proven herself to be a capable employee, and I believed that with time, Sarah would become an integral part of the team. In the late afternoon, as Sarah was about to leave the office, she paused at my desk, offering a small smile. "Thank you for today, William. I know it wasn't easy, but I really appreciate this opportunity." I responded with a nod, keeping my tone professional but unable to hide that she had done well. "Work is work. Sarah, you did well today. Keep it up." Sarah left, and I was left alone to reflect. Maybe Egan was right sometimes. The past needs to be left behind, and things aren't always as black and white as they seem. As time passed, the awkwardness and tension between Sarah and me slowly faded. At first, our conversations were still a bit stiff, but day by day, our professionalism and success at work helped us become more comfortable around each other. I no longer felt uneasy when discussing work with her, and Sarah no longer seemed as hesitant as she had been in those early days. We started treating each other as real colleagues, and later as friends. On stressful days with big projects, Sarah and I would often work late together, occasionally sharing light-hearted jokes to ease the fatigue. While we never brought up the past, there was an unspoken understanding that we had both moved past the difficult times and were ready to build a different kind of relationship, not as ex-lovers, but as friends who respected and trusted each other. Sarah had proven herself to be a strong woman, not just in her work but also in how she faced challenges. Every time she successfully completed a project or achieved a new milestone, I couldn't help but feel proud of my decision to hire her. Despite the initial doubts and awkwardness, the trust between Sarah and me continued to grow. Our lunch breaks at the nearby cafe became more frequent. At first, they were quick work meetings, but gradually we started talking about things outside of work, about life, hobbies, and future goals. Once, when I brought up a memory from the past, Sarah smiled and said, "It's funny, we used to have such awkward moments." I laughed along. "Yeah, but things are a lot better now." Sarah nodded, her expression softer than before. "Yes, I think now we can really be friends, right?" I agreed. "Definitely. Honestly, being friends might be the best thing we could have." As time went on, I realized that Sarah and I had become closer than just ordinary colleagues. Sarah wasn't just a valuable part of the company anymore. She had become a trusted friend. The tension and awkwardness that had once surrounded us were now distant memories. Going to work no longer felt uncomfortable. Instead, it was filled with ease and mutual understanding. I felt fortunate to have gotten through that tough phase and found a new, lasting friendship. The days passed quietly, but they brought with them a deep, peaceful connection between Sarah and me, a new relationship, free from the complexities of the past.
Gradually, my relationship with Sarah developed in ways I hadn't anticipated. Initially, we were just colleagues, then friends, but over time, I began to notice something different in the way she treated me. She started to show more interest in me, sometimes being overly attentive, making me wonder if she was trying to impress me.
There were moments when I'd be deeply focused on work, only to glance up and catch Sarah looking at me. She would quickly look away, pretending to be busy, but I wasn't oblivious to it. During stressful meetings, Sarah would often step in to support me, focusing on every small detail to ensure my tasks went smoothly. If I didn't know her so well, I might have thought she was just being a dedicated employee, but Sarah was more than that. I told myself, this is definitely one of those the more you run from love, the more it follows situations. Sarah seemed to be trying to get closer to me, albeit subtly. Her glances, her attentiveness, all signs that she still had feelings for me. But I kept my distance, refusing to let myself be easily swept away. To be honest, despite my best efforts to deny it, I still had some feelings for her. Old memories would occasionally creep into my thoughts, and sometimes I wondered if we could start over. But then, my pride and ego kicked in. I couldn't let her know I still had feelings, at least not right away. Instead of responding to the signals Sarah was sending, I acted indifferent. When she went out of her way to help me, I'd just smile faintly and brush it off, as if it wasn't anything special. Sometimes, when she asked me to join her for lunch, I'd pretend to be too busy to avoid giving her the impression that I was being caught. Even though my heart would race whenever she showed she cared, I maintained a quiet coldness. I won't let her think she can win me over that easily, I told myself, trying to keep my distance. But every time we worked together, I couldn't help but notice the way she gently touched my shoulder when asking for help, or the soft laughter that followed whenever I said something funny. I couldn't deny the connection between us. There was a familiar comfort that was hard to find elsewhere. Still, I kept reminding myself not to let my emotions get the better of me. It was tough pretending not to notice what was happening, but I had chosen this path to see who would hold out longer, who would admit their feelings first. Sarah, I thought, if you want to play this game, let's see if I'm the one who ends up running. The game between Sarah and me gradually became more apparent, and it seemed like she was starting to lose patience. With her strong-willed personality, Sarah wasn't someone who would let the situation drag on for too long. After her subtle efforts to get closer didn't yield the desired result, she decided to take a different, more unexpected approach through the back door. One morning, I received a call from my mom. Her voice was cheerful but carried a hint of something else as she told me that Sarah's parents had contacted them. I froze, confused as to why Sarah's parents would reach out after months of no contact between our families. Then Mom added, leaving me even more puzzled, they want to talk about the engagement that was called off. Remember? Sarah said she's reconsidered and now wants to revisit it. I was stunned, speechless for a few seconds. Sarah changed her mind? She had actually spoken with her parents, asking them to involve my family in this. It didn't seem like her at all. But then it dawned on me Sarah wasn't just being patient, she was fighting for what she wanted, discreetly. My mom continued, her tone full of hope, I think this is a good sign, son. Sarah's a good girl, and I've always liked her. Think about it, maybe this is a chance for you two to reconcile. I hung up the phone, my emotions in turmoil. Until now, I thought I was the one in control, that Sarah was pursuing me. But now, with this clever move, she had made me rethink everything. She wasn't just using her feelings, she was using her family, making it impossible for me to avoid this any longer. Sarah, you're stronger than I thought, I reflected. I realized that this chase was no longer just a simple game. Sarah had raised the stakes, and I couldn't continue pretending not to care. The meeting arranged by our parents took place at a fancy restaurant they had chosen. Everything was perfectly planned, from the soft lighting and the gentle background music to the carefully set table. Both sets of parents were present, smiling with satisfaction as if everything had already been decided. However, I sat there, filled with doubt and uncertainty about Sarah's true intentions. Sarah arrived, looking stunning in an elegant dress. But what struck me more than her appearance was the confidence in her eyes. She greeted everyone and exchanged pleasantries with both sets of parents, but I could sense that what she really wanted to say was meant just for me. After a few opening questions from the parents, Sarah finally turned to me, her voice soft yet resolute. William, I have something I need to tell you today. I looked up at her, wondering what was coming. The crowd around us seemed to fade away, leaving just me and Sarah in the center of the room. She continued, not breaking eye contact with me. Back then, I told you I wanted to call off the engagement. At the time, I thought I was making the right decision. But now, after everything we've been through and looking back, I realize I was wrong. Both sets of parents sat in silence, listening intently, clearly not expecting her blunt honesty. I don't want to cancel the engagement anymore, Sarah went on, her voice growing steadier. I've fallen in love with you again, William, not in the simple way I loved you before, but with real love. I can't pretend I can walk away from these feelings anymore. I sat there silently, not knowing how to respond. My emotions swirled inside me, surprise, warmth, and something else. Sarah looked directly into my eyes, unwavering. If you no longer have feelings for me, I'll respect that. But if you still feel anything, let's give ourselves a chance to start over. And if you're not ready to share your life with me right now, I'm willing to wait. I'll share everything with you, the joys, the sorrows, even the challenges. Just give us one more chance. The room suddenly felt quieter than ever. Everyone was waiting for my response, but all I could think about was Sarah, the woman I had once loved deeply, now showing me that real love still existed, stronger than I had imagined. I took a deep breath, feeling all the internal conflicts slowly fade away. Pride and ego no longer mattered. The only thing that did was what I truly felt for her. Sarah, I said softly, my voice calm but sure, I won't deny that I still have feelings for you, but we've been through a lot, and I need time to be certain about this. However, I'm willing to give us another chance. Sarah smiled, her eyes bright with hope. She reached for my hand under the table, gripping it tightly as if to make sure there was no longer any distance between us. Our parents breathed a sigh of relief, as if they had foreseen this happy ending all along. But for me and Sarah, this was just the beginning of a new chapter. We wouldn't rush, but at least we both knew that the love was still there, and this time we would write the next part of our story together. After that meeting, Everything between Sarah and me changed. We got back together, but this time it was different. There was no more awkwardness or hesitation like before. Our relationship became more mature and deeper. At the office, Sarah and I weren't shy about showing small gestures of affection, holding hands, exchanging loving glances. Our colleagues noticed, offering soft smiles and gentle teasing, but they were all happy for us. Every morning when Sarah walked into the office, she'd greet me with a sweet smile, and I couldn't help but respond with a gentle kiss on her cheek. Even though we kept things professional, no one could deny that the atmosphere between us had become much warmer. One day, as I sat in my office working, my phone suddenly rang. It was Egan. He had heard about Sarah and me getting back together. Of course, I knew there was nothing stopping Egan from teasing me about it. Egan texted, "I hear you're tangled up in love again, William. Don't tell me you and Sarah exchange lovey-dovey looks in the office every morning, haha." I chuckled as I read the message. "Go ahead, tease me all you want. Egan, you'll understand once you find the right person. Just don't be too jealous," I replied, knowing full well Egan was probably grinning from ear to ear somewhere. A minute later, Egan sent another text. "I'm not jealous, just concerned for you. Don't turn the office into your personal date spot every day. And hey, don't forget, I was the one who said from the start that you two should get back together. So when are you treating me to a meal for helping rekindle your love?" I couldn't help but burst out laughing, causing a few colleagues to glance over curiously. "I'll treat you, but this time Sarah gets to choose the place." "Brace yourself," I replied, knowing that Egan wouldn't stop teasing anytime soon. The following days became even more comfortable and happy between Sarah and me. At work, we worked in perfect sync, and outside of work, we enjoyed our evenings together watching movies or taking long walks. Our relationship progressed beyond just being colleagues or lovers. We became true partners in life, sharing every joy and challenge. Although Egan never missed an opportunity to tease me, I knew that deep down he was happy for us and had been supportive from the beginning. In fact, it was his humor and encouragement that had helped me realize the value of the love I almost let slip away. On this special occasion, I took Sarah to Egan's restaurant, determined to have a drink until we dropped night. The atmosphere was lively, full of laughter. Delicious food, glasses of wine flowing endlessly, and cheerful conversations made the evening perfect. Egan kept bringing out drinks, and I, having not had the chance to let loose in a while, eagerly joined in. However, my body couldn't handle it after so long without drinking much. As the party stretched into the late hours, I began to feel dizzy. After one more glass of wine, everything started to blur, and finally I collapsed to the floor, completely knocked out. Egan laughed and bent down to check on me. "It looks like this guy can't handle a wild night anymore," he joked. Sarah, worried, crouched beside me. "Is he okay?" she asked. Egan chuckled. "He's fine, just had too much to drink. Let me help you get William home." The two of them helped me into a taxi, and on the way back to my apartment, Egan and Sarah chatted lightly to ease the tense mood. "Thank you so much, Egan. I don't know what I'd do without you," Sarah said as the car rolled along. Egan laughed heartily. "No worries, I'm used to handling situations like this. William seems a lot happier since he's been dating you. He looks more at peace." Sarah smiled softly. "I feel the same way. He's truly wonderful." Egan glanced at her and grinned. "By the way, could I get your contact info? William's birthday is coming up, and I'd like to plan a surprise with you." Sarah nodded, and they quickly exchanged phone numbers before the taxi stopped in front of my apartment. Together, they carried me up to my place and laid me on the bed. Before leaving, Egan patted Sarah on the shoulder. "I think we could plan a big surprise party for him. William will never see it coming." Sarah smiled as she gently looked at me, sound asleep. "I think so too. Let's make sure everything is perfect." After Egan left, Sarah stayed by my side for a little while, watching my peaceful face as I slept. In that quiet moment, she felt grateful to have me in her life. The next morning, as I slowly opened my eyes, the first wave of dizziness hit. My head felt heavy, and everything around me was a little blurry, clearly the aftermath of last night's drinking. But when I turned to look around, I couldn't help but laugh softly. There was Sarah, my sweet girlfriend, sitting on a chair near the bed, her head resting on her hand, dozing off after staying up all night to watch over me. She looked adorable, and even with her slightly messy hair, the sight made my heart warm. I carefully sat up, trying not to make a sound. Gently, I brushed a stray lock of hair from Sarah's face and whispered softly, "I love you, Sarah. Thank you for always being by my side." As soon as the words left my mouth, Sarah stirred, her eyes slowly opening. She yawned and smiled when she saw me awake, watching her. "You're up. Why don't you rest a little more?" she asked, her voice still groggy but full of care. I smiled back. "I'm fine, I feel much better. But you're the one who should rest. You stayed up all night taking care of me?" Sarah rubbed her eyes and let out a small laugh. "I couldn't sleep peacefully knowing you passed out like that." I gently pulled her closer and whispered, "I'm so lucky to have you." "Thank you, Sarah." She smiled, her face glowing as she looked at me. I'm just doing what anyone who loves you would do. Now that you're better, let's get ready for the day, shall we? I nodded, and the two of us got up and started preparing a simple breakfast, chatting and laughing as we went. A new day had begun, and as always, we were ready to face whatever came our way together. 2 weeks later, winter would begin, and it would also be my birthday. Sarah, being as thoughtful and meticulous as she was, had marked the day in her phone long ago. She and Egan were secretly planning a special surprise, and to prepare for it, Sarah began leaving the office early every day instead of heading home with me as she usually did. At first, I thought nothing of it, but when Sarah continued to leave early for several days without any notice, I started feeling a bit sad and worried. We had always gone home together, and this sudden change made me feel like she was avoiding me for some reason. One evening, after Sarah once again left early without much explanation, I couldn't hold back my concerns any longer. I picked up my phone and messaged Egan, "Hey, Egan, do you know what's going on with Sarah? Lately, she's been leaving the office early without saying much. It's starting to make me feel like something's wrong." A few minutes later, Egan replied, "Buddy, she's probably just busy with something. Don't worry too much. Sometimes women have personal things they don't want to share right away." I stared at the screen, still feeling uneasy. I replied, "I'm not sure. It just feels off. She's never done this before. Suddenly, these past few days, she keeps leaving without explaining why." "Relax, William. Maybe she's planning something for the future between you two. I don't overthink it. Let things happen naturally." I sighed, knowing Egan was trying to reassure me, but the unease in my heart remained. "I hope you're right. I just don't want things to go wrong. Trust me, I'm sure Sarah wouldn't do anything to hurt you. Don't worry too much. Just let things play out." I sat quietly, staring at Egan's message. It did comfort me a little, but I still couldn't shake the worry completely. Regardless, I decided to take Egan's advice, hold back my feelings, and wait to see how things unfolded in the coming days. Meanwhile, at the mall, Egan and Sarah were busy preparing for William's surprise birthday plan. As Sarah browsed through gift options, Egan suddenly turned to her with a mischievous grin, holding up his phone. "Look at this, our buddy's getting a bit worried." Sarah glanced at his phone and saw William's message asking about why she had been leaving the office early. "Oh no, I didn't think he'd get this worried. I just wanted to keep the surprise a secret." Egan laughed, giving her a light pat on the shoulder. "Oh, don't worry," I reassured him. "But we better hurry up or the whole plan might get blown." After going through a few choices, they arrived at the men's luxury suit section, where Sarah thought something would suit William's lawyer role perfectly. However, standing in front of a row of elegant suits, Sarah realized she didn't know William's exact size. "Oh no, I don't know William's exact size." Egan raised an eyebrow, looked down at his own body, and shrugged. "He's about the same size as me. We're built pretty similarly." Sarah smiled slightly and asked Egan to try on a few suits to get the right size. When Egan tried on a well-fitted gray suit, a passing saleswoman couldn't help but compliment them. "Wow, what a lovely newlywed couple. The husband looks so dashing, and the wife has such good taste in picking clothes." Sarah's face immediately flushed red, her eyes wide with surprise. "Oh no, that's not what you think. He's my friend, not my husband." Egan burst into laughter, clearly enjoying the situation, while the saleswoman awkwardly apologized, making Sarah even more flustered. "Oh, I'm so sorry. My mistake, but I still have to say you two do make a great pair." Egan patted Sarah on the back, teasing, "See, at least someone thinks we look good together." Sarah shook her head, half laughing and half sighing. "All right, enough teasing. Let's pick a suit for William before someone else gets the wrong idea." They continued shopping, but the smile and embarrassment still lingered on Sarah's face. As they got closer to completing their surprise plan, Sarah felt a mix of excitement and nerves, hoping that nothing would spoil the big surprise for William. After finally choosing the perfect suit for William, Sarah and Egan headed to the checkout. The saleswoman, still remembering the earlier misunderstanding, smiled warmly as she thanked them. "Thank you so much. I hope your friend loves the suit." Sarah smiled back. "Thank you, I'm sure he'll love it." As they left the store, carrying the suit in hand, Egan suddenly rubbed his stomach and looked over at Sarah. "Hey, aren't you hungry? Shopping like this is making me crave some food." Sarah chuckled, realizing that she too was starting to feel hungry. "Actually, I was thinking the same. Do you know a good place nearby?" Egan raised an eyebrow and pointed to a sushi restaurant on the corner. "There's a sushi spot over there that looks pretty good. Want to give it a try?" Without hesitation, they decided to check out the sushi restaurant. They sat down and ordered a few plates of sashimi and fresh sushi. As the food arrived, they began chatting animatedly. "So, how's the plan coming along? I feel like we've almost got everything ready," Egan said between bites. Sarah nodded, enjoying a piece of sushi. "Yeah, just a few more details left. What do you think William's reaction will be when he finds out we've been secretly planning all this?" Egan laughed. He's going to be shocked. William always likes things to be clear and planned, so he won't expect a surprise like this at all. Sarah smiled. I know, he's so meticulous. It's hard to keep secrets from him, but I think this time we'll pull it off. Egan shrugged and joked. And if it doesn't work out, at least we've got him a new suit. We'll just treat this sushi as a reward before finishing up the plan. Sarah laughed, giving Egan a playful pat on the shoulder. Come on, it'll definitely work out. Thanks so much for helping me with everything. I don't know how I would have managed without you. Egan smiled and continued enjoying his sushi. Don't worry. I'm always here when you need me. You focus on the gift, and I'll make sure everything else goes smoothly. The meal continued in a relaxed and joyful atmosphere. They chatted about William, fine-tuned the birthday plan, and shared their excitement for the surprise to come. In the following days, Sarah and Egan continued preparing for my surprise birthday party. However, Sarah's consistent early departures from the office and her seeming avoidance of me made me increasingly worried. Each time I tried to ask her about it, she would vaguely say she was busy with personal matters. It left me wondering if I had done something wrong. One afternoon, feeling like I couldn't take the tension anymore, I decided to text Egan for advice, hoping to talk to someone I trusted. Hey, do you have some free time? I need to ask you about some stuff with women, you know what I mean. Egan replied after a few minutes, but his answer wasn't what I expected. Sorry, buddy. I'm tied up right now. Maybe we can catch up later. I sighed, feeling a wave of disappointment. Egan had always been the one I could count on, especially for advice about relationships. But now that even Egan was too busy, I wasn't sure what to do next. All right, maybe I'm just overthinking things. Thanks. Anyway, I replied. Don't worry, it's probably nothing serious. Stay calm. Everything will be fine. I turned off my phone, trying to reassure myself, but the lingering worry wouldn't go away. What was Sarah doing? Had I done something wrong that made her distance herself from me? These questions kept swirling in my mind, filling me with unease. Sarah and Egan had decided to throw a surprise birthday party for William at Sarah's apartment. It was a cozy and convenient venue, and with Egan's help, they began decorating the space for the event. While hanging balloons and banners, Sarah and Egan accidentally brushed hands several times as they moved decorations around. Every time this happened, Sarah felt her face flush, a little embarrassed, but Egan took it differently. He grinned mischievously, his eyes twinkling. Looks like we make a better team than I thought, Sarah. Sarah awkwardly smiled, trying to laugh it off to keep the situation from becoming uncomfortable. It's just a coincidence, don't overthink it. But Egan kept playfully teasing her, as if it was all harmless fun. So many coincidences. Maybe it's fate. Or are you doing this on purpose, Sarah? Sarah playfully swatted his arm, trying to keep things light. You're impossible. Focus on the decorations or William might come back early and ruin the surprise. Egan burst out laughing and returned to work, but it was clear that the constant physical interaction had left a small imprint. Sarah tried to focus on the preparations, but she couldn't shake off the slight discomfort she felt. Even though she knew Egan was only joking, the tension lingered. After a few hours of exhausting decorating, Egan lay sprawled on the floor, admiring their work with a satisfied smile. The banners, balloons, and twinkling lights had transformed Sarah's apartment into a warm, festive space. I've got to say, we did a pretty good job. William's going to be blown away. Sarah stood up and smiled. I'll make some hot cocoa for you. You deserve it after all that hard work. Egan closed his eyes, relaxing on the floor as he chuckled. Thanks, girl. I'll be waiting. Sarah went into the kitchen to make the cocoa, but while she was distracted, boiling water splashed onto her hand. She yelped in pain. Ouch, that hurts. Hearing her cry, Egan immediately got up and rushed over to her. Are you okay? He quickly noticed the burn on her hand, and without hesitation, took her hand in his and gently blew on the burn, trying to soothe the pain. Sarah stood still, her eyes locked on Egan. She felt a bit awkward, her gaze wavering as she watched him take care of her. In that moment, something unexpected passed between them, a feeling of closeness she hadn't anticipated. Egan noticed Sarah staring at him and flashed a smug smile. What's the matter? You're looking at me like you just discovered something new. Flustered, Sarah quickly turned red, caught off guard. No, it's nothing. Egan raised an eyebrow and gave her a playful, confident grin. Could it be that I'm starting to make you fall for me, Sarah? Sarah's face burned with embarrassment, and she turned away immediately, avoiding his gaze. Stop teasing. We still have a lot to do. Egan laughed, but didn't push further. He went back to relaxing while Sarah quietly finished making the cocoa, trying to ignore the strange feeling that lingered. The unexpected contact and Egan's teasing had left a mark that she couldn't easily dismiss. Winter had finally arrived, and today was my birthday. Yet, I didn't feel particularly happy. Sarah hadn't texted or called me in days, making me feel distant and alone. I had thought about going to her place to ask what was going on, but I hesitated, not wanting to intrude. A mix of unease and sadness clouded my heart. I sat in my office, staring out the window, wondering if I had done something wrong to make Sarah avoid me. Lost in my thoughts, I was suddenly startled by a familiar voice behind me. Surprise. I turned around in shock to see Sarah standing there, her face glowing with a playful smile. Sarah? I thought you. Before I could finish, she grabbed my hand, grinning brightly. Come on, you have to follow me. There's a surprise waiting for you. Sarah pulled me out of the office and took me to her apartment. The moment I stepped through the door, I was met with a burst of confetti, shot into the air by Egan, who jumped out from a corner. Happy birthday, William? I stood frozen, eyes wide with surprise. The room was filled with birthday decorations, balloons, and banners. Sarah and Egan began singing the birthday song, their voices filling the warm, cozy room. Overwhelmed with emotion, I couldn't hold back the tears. I thought you both had forgotten about me. I thought you didn't care anymore. Sarah walked over and gently hugged me. How could I ever forget you? Egan and I just wanted to surprise you. I hugged Sarah back, feeling the warmth and love radiating from her. The worries that had consumed me over the past few days melted away in an instant. Afterward, we cut the birthday cake together, with Egan cracking jokes that kept the room filled with laughter. Once the cake was cut, Sarah and Egan led me to the armchair in the living room. Sarah beamed as she pulled out a box from the corner of the room. Now for your special gift. Egan opened the box, revealing a luxurious suit perfect for a lawyer like me. I was speechless, filled with gratitude. Thank you both. This is more than I ever expected. Sarah gently took my hand, her eyes full of warmth. You deserve all of this and more. Happy birthday, William. In that moment, I felt incredibly lucky to have such wonderful friends and a girlfriend like Sarah. After the surprise party, life gradually returned to normal. Sarah continued to spend a lot of time with me at the office, helping me with work, and when we got home, she was always by my side, making me feel secure again. However, I noticed that Sarah was becoming closer to Egan. They often texted, exchanged ideas, and sometimes met up to discuss work or just talk about everyday things. One evening, while we were having dinner together, I couldn't hold back my curiosity any longer, though I tried to keep my tone light. I've noticed you and Egan have been talking a lot lately. You two seem closer than before. Sarah chuckled softly, setting down her chopsticks. Yeah, we spend a lot of time together preparing for your birthday, and after that, we've just talked a bit about work sometimes. There's nothing more to it. I nodded, smiling faintly. I was just curious, but I know Egan's a good friend. Sarah looked at me with sincerity in her eyes. He is, William, but I always prioritize my time and attention for you. You don't need to worry. I smiled, feeling somewhat reassured, though a small hint of curiosity remained. However, I chose not to dwell on it, deciding to trust both Sarah and Egan, since they were two of the most important people in my life. As time passed, I started noticing small cracks in my relationship with Sarah. She often laughed when texting on her phone, and I realized it usually happened when we weren't together. At first, I didn't think much of it, but gradually it became harder to ignore. Whenever we went out for dinner, Sarah always insisted on going to Egan's restaurant. While I enjoyed the place too, her constant preference for Egan's restaurant started making me wonder. One evening, after work, I suggested trying a new restaurant I had recently discovered. However, Sarah shook her head, smiling softly. How about we go to Egan's? It's clean, the food's great, and you can catch up with your buddy. Plus, the food there is always good. I paused, feeling a twinge of something I couldn't quite grasp. Do you really like Egan's place that much? I just thought we could try something different for a change. Sarah smiled, her eyes twinkling. Well, don't you feel comfortable there? Egan's your best friend. What's better than eating at a place where we both feel at home? I nodded, not wanting to spoil the mood. You're probably right. But a little change now and then wouldn't hurt. Sarah giggled and linked her arm with mine. I promise, next time we'll try your place. But tonight, let's go to Egan's, okay? I reluctantly agreed, and we ended up at Egan's restaurant again. Although the atmosphere was pleasant, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As usual, Sarah and I arrived at Egan's restaurant. The familiar cozy atmosphere surrounded us as we stepped inside. Egan, standing behind the kitchen counter, saw us and immediately flashed a big smile, waving us over. William, Sarah, you two came at the perfect time. I've got a few new dishes tonight, and I bet you'll love them. I smiled back and sat down with Sarah at our usual table near the kitchen. As Egan came over to greet us, I noticed their eyes meeting for a brief moment. There was something in the way they looked at each other, an undercurrent of intimacy, a fleeting hint of flirtation. It made me pause for a second. Maybe I'm just imagining things. I'm probably just tired and reading too much into it, I told myself, trying to brush off the uneasy feeling and continue with the conversation. Egan asked about my work as usual, but every now and then, his eyes would dart towards Sarah, and I couldn't help but notice. Work's been fine, nothing too exciting. How about you? The restaurant seems busy these days. Yeah, it's always bustling, but that's how I like it. And with regulars like you and Sarah coming in so often, there's never a dull moment. Sarah chuckled at Egan's comment, and once again I saw their eyes meet. But this time, the exchange was even quicker. It felt strange, but I still chose not to ask directly. You've always been good at keeping things lively. Despite trying to convince myself that it was all in my head, the unsettling feeling wouldn't go away. Instead of confronting the situation head-on, I reassured myself that maybe it was just the lighting, or perhaps I was simply exhausted. We continued our meal, and I did my best to keep things as normal as possible. Later that weekend, I hosted a small party at my house to celebrate receiving yet another award for outstanding legal work. I invited Egan and Sarah, as they were the closest people in my life. Everything went as planned, and the atmosphere was lighthearted as we prepared for a barbecue in the backyard. I was slicing the meat when I got an urgent call from my boss. He told me I needed to head out immediately to deal with a pressing case. There was no other option, so I quickly turned to Egan and Sarah. I've got to step out for a bit. Something came up. If I don't make it back in time, you two can start the barbecue without me. I'll be back as soon as I can. Sarah looked at me with concern. Are you sure you'll be okay? Do you need me to come with you? I smiled, shaking my head. It's fine, I can handle it. You two stay here, grill the meat, and enjoy yourselves. I won't be gone long. After I left, the air grew a little quieter, but Egan, with his usual cheerful demeanor, quickly turned to Sarah, teasing her with a playful smile. Well, it looks like it's just the two of us now. Don't worry, we can handle this barbecue ourselves. I want me to show you how to get the perfect grill marks. Sarah smiled, a bit bashful but nodded. I'm not the best at this. Please show me how it's done. Egan moved closer, standing behind Sarah as she placed the meat on the grill. Here, let me help you control the heat so the meat doesn't burn. As Egan stood behind Sarah, their hands brushed against each other while adjusting the grill. They laughed and joked, and the atmosphere between them grew more relaxed, even intimate. As the barbecue continued, the atmosphere between Sarah and Egan became increasingly ambiguous. They kept laughing, their hands occasionally brushing as they grilled the meat. The fire from the grill was hot, but the tension between them felt even hotter. Sarah, I have to admit, you've really changed. Ever since you and William started dating, I can't stop thinking about you. Sarah turned to look at Egan, surprised and clearly flustered. What are you saying? You must be joking, right? Egan stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. No, I'm serious. Haven't you felt something between us? Sarah was silent for a moment, her eyes betraying emotions she had been hiding. She bit her lip, as if struggling with herself. I don't know. You're confusing me. Egan didn't say anything else, just held her gaze. In that moment, they seemed to understand each other without needing to explain. And before either of them could think, they kissed a kiss full of desire and surprise. They realized their feelings had crossed a line. But just then, from the doorway, I appeared. I had come back because I had forgotten my laptop with important case files. When I walked into the backyard, I couldn't believe my eyes. Sarah and Egan were kissing, completely unaware of my presence. I stood there, frozen, my heart wrenching in pain, feeling utterly betrayed. Sarah, Egan, what's going on? Sarah and Egan jumped apart, their faces filled with shock. Neither of them said a word, both standing still, unsure of what to do as the truth lay exposed in front of me, the person they were supposed to care about the most. I stood there, unable to believe what I had just witnessed. Sarah, the woman I loved, and Egan, my best friend, they had just kissed right in front of me. The scene felt like a punch straight to my heart, leaving me standing there in shock. I tried to steady myself, even though the pain was overwhelming. I looked at both of them, my eyes filled with disappointment and confusion. Sarah, Egan, what the hell is happening? I asked, my voice shaky and uncertain, no longer holding its usual firmness. Neither of them answered. Both Sarah and Egan stood frozen, unable to meet my gaze. The silence between us only deepened the hurt in my chest. It felt like my heart had turned cold as the harsh winter outside. I had always thought I was strong, able to face any challenge with calm. But here, in front of me, were the two people I trusted the most, betraying me in the most unexpected way. I wasn't strong anymore. Everything seemed to collapse in that moment. As a successful lawyer, I had handled countless tense and complex situations, but now I couldn't find the words to save this situation. I was exhausted, and I didn't want to fight anymore. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice as calm as possible. Both of you leave. They both looked up at me, their eyes filled with confusion and a hint of guilt. But I didn't want to hear any explanations right now. I need to be alone. Just go, I repeated, my voice raspy from the overwhelming emotions I was trying to suppress. Sarah opened her mouth as if to say something, but then closed it, lowering her head in silence. Egan didn't utter a word, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. In the end, both of them quietly turned and left, exiting the house without a word. As the door closed, it felt like everything around me collapsed. My mind went blank, and I slumped down onto the couch, burying my head in my hands. A wave of emptiness, loss, and pain washed over me. Maybe I had missed the signs, the times Sarah laughed on her phone, her insistence on going to Egan's restaurant, the strange glances they exchanged. All those moments had once made me uneasy, but I had deceived myself into thinking everything was fine. Work, the recent achievements I had accomplished, none of it mattered anymore. All I could think about now was the betrayal from the two people I valued most. I sat there, facing the pain in silence, trying to pull myself together, but my heart, much like the weather outside, had grown cold. A few weeks after that heartbreaking event, I had enough time to reflect and make a decision about my path forward. Although my heart still ached, I knew that clinging to the past or harboring resentment would only deepen the wounds. Despite the sadness of losing both my friendship with Egan and the relationship I had with Sarah, I chose to end things peacefully. One afternoon, Sarah came to see me to apologize. She stood before me, her eyes filled with regret and sorrow. "I'm sorry, William. I never meant for things to end up this way. You didn't deserve this." I looked at her, bitterness swelling in my chest, but I was too tired to hold on to anger. "I understand. We're all human, and sometimes emotions take us places we never expected. I just want you to know I don't hate you or Egan, but I need to leave to find balance again." Sarah lowered her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm sorry for hurting you. I only hope you find happiness somewhere else." I nodded, not saying anything more. That was our final goodbye. Before leaving the city, I decided to visit Egan at his restaurant, the place where we had shared so many good memories. As I walked in, I saw him standing at the kitchen counter, just like always. He looked up when he saw me, a flicker of awkwardness in his eyes. "Egan, I need to talk to you." Egan quietly approached, not saying anything at first. Finally, he sighed. "William, there's nothing I can say to justify what happened. I know I hurt you, and I'm truly sorry." I looked at him, a sense of loss washing over me. "I'm sorry too. Sorry for the friendship we had. We've been through so much, but now, things have changed." Egan lowered his head, unable to meet my gaze. "I know. If I could take it all back." I shook my head, cutting him off. "None of us can change the past, Egan, but I want this to end peacefully. I don't want to carry resentment. You and Sarah live your lives, be happy. I'm leaving the city, starting fresh somewhere else." Egan remained silent, then nodded slightly. "I hope you find peace, William." I smiled faintly, finally letting go of the pain and regret. "Goodbye, Egan, take care of yourself." With that farewell, I walked out of the restaurant, and out of the lives of the two people who had once been closest to me. I knew that no matter what, I would find peace elsewhere, in a place where the painful memories couldn't follow. And so, I left the city, leaving behind my past. My parents from both sides wanted to call me back to clarify things after they found out, but I ignored them. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered now was that I knew it was time to move forward.